As we move through the primaries and head towards the November midterm elections, a lot of people are wondering, well, how engaged are American voters this time around? Here to talk about that is Andrea Hailey. She's the CEO of Voteorg, is the nation's largest non-political digital voter engagement organization. Andrea, thanks for joining us. What are you seeing out there?
Thank you for having me. We are seeing record-breaking momentum all across the nation right now. At Vote.org, we've already registered over 2 million voters for this midterm cycle. That's about double where the energy that we saw at this point last cycle. We still have National Voter Registration Day and all the big voter registration moments coming up. So the fact that the American public is this fired up and ready to go is pretty exciting.
And what is fueling it in your estimation?
I think we've seen a few things. Post the Roe decision getting overturned in states like Kansas, we saw an immediate 1,000% increase in voter registrations across the nation. But I think the thing to remember is that it wasn't just Kansas. We also saw a 500% increase in 11 other states immediately the week after Roe was overturned. So I think some of these hot button issues of the day are motivating voters to make sure that they participate and that they have their voice heard. I do think that on top of really large election cycle and the presidential cycle with high turnout and high turnout in the previous midterm, the American public is really paying attention to their democracy and the mechanisms by which they can vote and participate.
A lot of people are drawing a connection to, say, 2020. In 2020, that was the summer of George Floyd. He was killed in Minneapolis. There was a sudden huge influx of voter registration among younger voters who listed racism as one of the top issues. And I think participation in the 2020 election among younger voters was 50%, whereas in 2016, it was 39%. Can an external event have that sort of impact?
Absolutely. We saw immediate spikes in youth voting or youth registration. We can tell when major events happen across the country, we see it on our platform. The spikes happen, immediately and sometimes organically. And so I think, yes, absolutely, these big moments can make a difference. And what people are seeing in their feeds every day makes a difference. I think that especially people who are Vote.org, the majority of our users are 35 and under. So I think that group of people is realizing that you can't take democracy for granted. You can't take access to the ballot box for granted. The thing they saw immediately after the 2020 election cycle was 400 voter suppression bills crisscross the nation. I think that there is higher awareness now that there are people out there trying to roll back rights and access to the ballot box. And I think what we're seeing in this younger generation is that they're going to show up and keep showing up, whether it's a midterm cycle or a presidential cycle, and that they, care about the issues that are important to them and want to preserve access.
And in order to show up, and given all of those voter suppression bills, is it incumbent now on people to say register earlier? I mean, how much has changed in terms of people who do want to participate? How much more of a burden is on them to start acting well in advance of an election as opposed to right before it?
It depends on what state you live in, but I think the most important thing, and we learned it in 2020, and voters especially learned it in 2020, and they're learning it now, is to plan your vote early, to really make sure that the rules in your state early, to come check the website early. We track all of that for voters so that they don't have to. I think the big lesson has been to move up the time frame. If you're waiting till election day to get out there, it's more likely that you might miss. So you want to know when early voting is, if you can vote by mail, how to vote by mail, and really make that plan in advance. And we're seeing voters do just that. At this point in the election cycle, the fact that so many people are coming to our platform means that they're thinking about their vote, they are planning it early, and that message is getting out there.
Does it also mean that perhaps a lot of the polling that may be done is going to be wrong? And the reason I say that is because pollsters typically, when they try to come up with a sample pool of voters, they will try to examine, okay, well, did this voter who has a preference, did they vote in the last election? And if they did, they are a likely voter and therefore they're part of the pool. But if you suddenly have a lot of new voters or people who didn't participate last time around, then the polling could be skewed, I suppose, if you're not including those people in your sample.
That's absolutely right. And at Vote.org, we believe that everyone's a likely voter. You just have to reach out to them and ask them to vote and ask them to participate. But oftentimes people look at people, it's just like building credit. People look at people with long voting histories and use them as a sample size. We had a lot of first time voters that showed up in the 2020 2020 election cycle. And a lot of those people plan to come back, but they might not have the voting track record that gets them caught up in polls. So absolutely, we are seeing more momentum than people out there are talking about. We are seeing more engagement across many of our state pages than people are talking about. And that tells me that if we're seeing double the traffic that we saw at this time during 2018 was a very high participation election year for a midterm election. I believe these young voters and first-time voters from the last cycle are coming back. And I believe that more and more people are realizing that their democracy is at stake and waking up and looking at how to participate.
Fair to assume that so many of those people who want to participate in 2022, the new voters, that they are women who are registering. I would imagine they are outpacing men in terms of registration.
Absolutely, women are definitely outpacing men in terms of registration all throughout the country by really, really high number. And young women are showing up and registering. And so I think that anytime you take a right away from the American public, it's not surprising to me. Americans love their rights. It's not surprising to me that then the reaction to that is more people embracing their voice and embracing their ability to participate in the process. And we are certainly seeing that with women.
There's been a lot of discussion about whether social media has a sort of an effect of tamping down participation, that because social media can be so abrasive and so partisan that a lot of people sort of get sick of the political dialogue, the political debate, and it trickles down by causing people to say, well, I just don't want to be part of this process. Are you seeing that very much? And what, if anything, could be done about it?
We're actually seeing the opposite. We're seeing a lot of people communicating through social media saying, get out to vote, telling their friends and family members that they already registered and telling people to check their registration. We see a high number of influencers and micro influencers. Remember, everybody can be an influencer in their community, posting on social media, and then we can really see in real time the effect of those posts on the site and the numbers that people are driving to the site. So I think social media can be a positive tool to spread the word and to spread the word about how to participate in elections. I think we are not seeing high levels of disengagement. The numbers, like I said, are pretty high for this point in the election cycle. We are seeing that, I do know that at the end of the day, voters want to make sure that they can safeguard elections, that they can, know how they participate, and that they can, go out and tell friends and family to also do the same.
Are there particular races, whether it's gubernatorial races or congressional races, that you see being particularly impacted by the sort of momentum, the surge that you've been monitoring?
Since we're 501c3, we're not really tracking the specific races. So we're seeing events coming out of states like Missouri, Indiana, Illinois, Texas, Pennsylvania, Tennessee, Washington State. My estimation is that these are places that were highly motivated by women wanting to show up because of recent events in, across our nation. Those are the key states that we're really seeing a higher traffic from right now.
And as you see the higher traffic, is it sort of people say, oh yeah, of course, people are going to be more passionate, but are they as informed on the issues of the various ballot measures of the local candidates as you would hope? Or is this really just driven by, I'm mad, so I'm gonna vote, and I don't quite know what I'm gonna do yet?
I think there's a combination. People are certainly fired up. I think also over the last few years, more people have started to do their homework about what affects their town, their local street, their neighborhood, their city. People have learned a lot about what does a mayor do, who's in charge of the police force, who's in charge of budgets, what does the city council do? People have really dug in on these civic engagement questions that for so long in our country, I think people just weren't didn't really know that much about. And I think especially when you talk about the younger generation, they really were connecting the dots over the last election cycle about who makes decisions in their community and who they elect. So I think that we're seeing a higher level of civic education than we've seen in recent history.
And for people who want to participate, if they go to vote.org, how does your organization help them? How can that sort of guide them to where they want to go?
Go to vote.org. You click on your state. We have pages for every single state, and we could tell you the rules that what you need to be able to participate in elections. We also give the dates and deadlines for elections. We let you know when early voting is. You can go to the site and check and verify your registration to make sure you're still on the voter rolls. It's good for everyone to do. I do it just to make sure that. You can do that
online these days. You can just, with a couple of clicks, you can confirm your registration.
That's right. It takes less than 2 minutes. You can just go online, put your name in, and we can verify whether you're registered or not. If you're not registered, we'll take you through the registration process. If you are registered, you can look at what dates you need to know when the election is and when early voting and things like that are, so that you can make your plan to vote and make sure you get in there early.
You mentioned that we're still a little bit early before the November election. Is this the sort of trend that tends to peter out, or does the momentum even grow in a year like this?
Oh, the momentum is going to grow in a year like this. If we're seeing it this early, all indicators are that it will become even larger as we get closer and closer to the election. So I think we're about to see high participation in this year's election.
High participation, I think it's great for everybody. And of course, some of the candidates may agree or disagree, but in any case, remarkable voter energy that is out there in this midterm election. Andrea Hailey, CEO of Voteorg. Andrea, thanks for coming on and explaining this for us. We appreciate it, and good luck to you.
Absolutely, thank you so much.